Orphan boy rescues injured alien girl from a crash, not knowing she's the enemy general's heiress. Yeah, why? The crash, the sky burned red the night everything changed. Cale Ashford crouched on the edge of a collapsed highway, his eyes scanning the wasteland below for anything worth taking. At 18, he'd spent half his life alone in these ruins, picking through the bones of a city that died before he could remember it living. The war between humans and the Valtorians had raged for 20 years, and this planet, once called New Haven, had become a graveyard for both sides. He was about to climb down when the sky screamed. A streak of white fire tore across the darkness, so bright it cast shadows where none should exist. Cale's heart hammered as he watched the object plummet, trailing smoke and debris. It crashed somewhere beyond the industrial sector, the impact shaking the ground beneath his feet. A ship. Alien. Judging by the purple energy still crackling around the crash site. Every instinct told him to run the other way. Alien meant danger. Alien meant death. But alien also meant technology. Power cells, navigation systems, maybe even weapons. Things he could trade for food, for supplies, for another month of survival. Kyle grabbed his pack and ran. The crash site was worse than he'd imagined. The ship had carved a trench through the rubble, its hull split open like a broken egg. Fire still burned in patches, casting dancing shadows across twisted metal. He approached cautiously, scanning for movement, for soldiers, for anything that might kill him. That's when he saw her. She lay half buried in debris, one arm twisted at a wrong angle, purple blood staining the ground beneath her. Her skin had a faint lavender hue that marked her as Valtorian, and her dark hair fell across a face that looked far too young to be a soldier. She couldn't have been older than him. She was dying. Cale stepped closer, his salvaged blade ready. He should finish it. End her before she could call for help or activate some hidden weapon. He'd heard the stories. Valtorians were ruthless, inhuman, monsters who burned entire cities without mercy. But when her eyes fluttered open, unfocused and filled with pain, he saw something he didn't expect. Fear. Please. The word came out in broken human dialect, barely a whisper. Her hand reached toward him, trembling, before falling limp. Cale stood frozen, war raging inside his chest. Every person he'd ever known had been killed by her kind. He should hate her, should want her dead. Instead, he found himself kneeling beside her, checking her injuries with shaking hands. The arm was definitely broken and she had burns across her side. Without treatment, she had maybe hours. Damn it, he muttered, already knowing what he was about to do. He couldn't carry her far, not with her injuries, but his shelter wasn't too distant. Cale worked quickly, fashioning a makeshift stretcher from debris in his coat. Every second mattered. Human patrols would investigate the crash soon. As gently as he could, he lifted her onto the stretcher. She gasped in pain but didn't wake. Up close, he noticed details he'd missed before. The elegant markings along her collarbone that seemed to shimmer faintly. The way her features were both alien and strangely familiar. Cale dragged her through the ruins as the fires behind them painted the sky orange. He didn't know why he was saving her. Didn't know what he'd do when she woke. All he knew was that leaving her to die felt wrong in a way he couldn't explain. His shelter was hidden in the basement of what used to be an apartment complex. He'd spent months making it secure, comfortable even. A mattress salvaged from the upper floors, a working water purifier, canned goods stacked in corners. He laid her on his bed and began working on her wounds by lamplight, using supplies he'd bartered for over months. The broken arm he splinted carefully, the burns he cleaned and wrapped. Her pulse was weak but steady. When he finally sat back exhausted, dawn was breaking through the cracks in the ceiling. Cale stared at the unconscious alien girl who'd invaded his life without warning. "What have I done?" he whispered to the empty room. But she was already there, breathing softly in the half-light, and there was no going back now. Healing wounds for 3 days, Cale lived in a state of constant anxiety. The alien girl, he still didn't know her name, drifted in and out of consciousness, muttering words in a language he couldn't understand. He changed her bandages, forced water between her lips, and watched the door with his blade always within reach. On the 4th morning, he woke to find her eyes open. Watching him, Kyle jerked upright, scrambling for his weapon. She flinched, pressing herself against the wall despite the obvious pain it caused. In the dim light filtering through the ceiling cracks, her purple-tinted skin seemed to glow faintly. "Stay back," he warned. though his voice came out less threatening than he intended. She raised her good hand slowly, palm out, a gesture of peace that apparently transcended species. "No hurt," she said in halting human speech. "Please, no hurt." Her accent was strange, musical almost, but her fear was unmistakable. Kyle lowered the blade slightly, though he kept it ready. "You speak our language?" "Little. Learn. In academy." She winced, touching her splinted arm gently. "You fix me?" "I should have let you die," Kale said, but the words lacked conviction. Something flickered across her face, surprise perhaps, or gratitude. "Why you don't?" That was the question he'd been asking himself for days. Kale set the blade down but didn't move closer. "I don't know. Stupidity, probably." Over the next few days, a careful routine developed. Kale would hunt for supplies in the early morning while she slept, always returning with food and fresh water. She grew stronger gradually, able to sit up, then stand with support. They didn't speak much at first. The language barrier made conversation difficult, and trust was fragile as glass between them. But slowly, inevitably, walls began to crack. "My name." "Zafira," she told him one evening as he changed her bandages. The burns were healing remarkably fast, faster than human wounds would. "Zafira Caney, Kale," he replied. "Kyle Ashford." "Kyle." She tested the name, her accent curling around the syllables. "Mean something? Inhuman?" "It's just a name. Means nothing special." He secured the last bandage, perhaps more gently than necessary. "What about yours?" "Means wind from stars." She smiled slightly, the first real expression beyond pain or fear he'd seen on her face. It transformed her features, made her look even younger. "My mother choose." "She loved poetry?" "Yes, poetry." "Loved?" Kale caught the past tense. Zafira's smile faded. "She die in war. When I am small." The words hung between them, heavy with shared understanding. Kale sat back, studying her face. "My parents, too. Bombing raid when I was 7. Everyone I knew, actually. That's why I'm alone here. I am sorry." Zafira reached out instinctively, her fingers brushing against his hand where it rested on the floor. The touch sent an unexpected jolt through him. Her skin was warmer than he'd expected, soft despite the calluses he could feel on her palm. Kale didn't pull away. "Your people did it. The bombing. I know." Her eyes glistened with moisture. Apparently Valtorians could cry too. "My people do many terrible things. Your people too. War make everyone into monsters." Her hand remained on his, her thumb moving in what might have been an unconscious gesture of comfort. Kale stared at where they touched, purple skin against tan, enemy and enemy becoming something else entirely. "You said you're a medic?" he asked, needing to break the intensity of the moment. Zafira hesitated just for a fraction of a second. "Yes, on ship. Science division. I study biology. Healing." There was something in her hesitation, but Kale was too distracted by the warmth of her hand to pursue it. "That explains why you're healing so fast. Valtorian biology different. We heal quick, but..." She gestured to her splinted arm. "Not magic. Still hurt?" Despite himself, Kale smiled. "I noticed. You complain in your sleep. I do not." Her indignation was so genuine, so normal, that he actually laughed. The sound felt foreign in his throat. He couldn't remember the last time he'd had reason to laugh. Zafira's expression softened. "You should laugh more. It make you look less frightening." "I'm frightening." He raised an eyebrow. "You're the alien, and you are the human who saved me. Very frightening." But she was smiling again, and her hand squeezed his gently before she pulled away. That night, Kale lay on the floor beside his bed. He'd insisted she keep it while recovering, and stared at the cracked ceiling. Her breathing was steady above him, peaceful. He thought about how easy it had become to be near her, to forget she was supposed to be his enemy. He thought about the warmth of her hand, and wondered what it meant that he wanted to feel it again. Walls breaking down. 2 weeks after the crash, Zafira was strong enough to walk without support. Kale had mixed feelings about this. Part of him was relieved. Caring for an injured person was exhausting and dangerous given the need for constant vigilance. But another part, a part he didn't want to examine too closely, mourned the loss of those quiet moments, changing bandages, sharing meals, her hand seeking his in the darkness when nightmares woke her. "Show me your world." Zafira said one morning, her eyes bright with curiosity. Your city. I want to understand, Kyle hesitated. Taking her outside meant risk, but keeping her locked in the basement felt increasingly like imprisonment, and the hope in her voice was hard to resist. Only the safe zones, he agreed, and you cover up. If anyone sees you, I know. She wrapped herself in his spare jacket, pulling the hood low over her face. Even hidden, she moved with a grace that caught his attention, fluid and precise, like every gesture was intentional. He led her through the ruins as the afternoon sun painted everything gold and amber. Buildings stood like broken teeth against the sky, nature slowly reclaiming what humans had built. Zafira stayed close, her wonder evident in how she examined everything. The twisted metal sculptures that used to be vehicles, the wildflowers growing through cracked pavement, the birds nesting in shattered windows. Was beautiful, she murmured, touching a piece of decorative stonework still clinging to a wall. Your city. Can see it underneath. You should have seen it before, Kyle said quietly. He stopped in front of a collapsed building, its facade partially intact. This was my home. I lived on the 6th floor with my parents and little sister. Zafira's hand found his without hesitation this time. Tell me about them, so he did. For the first time since their deaths, Kale talked about his family, his mother's laugh, his father's terrible jokes, his sister's obsession with collecting rocks. Zafira listened with complete attention, occasionally asking questions, never pitying but always understanding. When he finished, she was quiet for a long moment. Then, my father, he would not approve of this, of me being here with you. Because I'm human? Because I'm supposed to hate you? She turned to face him, pushing back her hood slightly. In the golden light, her purple skin seemed to shimmer, and her eyes, deep violet he'd learned, held an intensity that made his breath catch. But I don't hate you at all, Kale. His heart hammered against his ribs. They stood too close. Close enough that he could see the patterns in her skin, like constellations mapped across her cheeks and forehead. Zafira, this is wrong, yes? She whispered, but she didn't move away. Everything say we should be enemies. But when I am with you, I feel safe. First time since my mother died. You make me feel safe. Kale's hand rose almost of its own accord, hovering near her face. Can I? She nodded, and he brushed his fingers along her cheek. Her skin was warm, soft as silk, and she leaned into the touch with a small sound that sent heat through his entire body. We should go back, he managed, though moving was the last thing he wanted. Instead of answering, Zafira stood on her toes and pressed her lips to his. The kiss was gentle, questioning, and it shattered something inside Kale's chest. He responded without thinking, his arms wrapping around her waist as hers circled his neck. She tasted like the mint tea he'd been making her, and she fit against him perfectly despite all the ways they were different. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Zafira rested her forehead against his. Maybe wrong, she breathed, but feel so right. That night, Kale took her to his favorite place, the roof of the tallest remaining building, where the stars spread out like diamonds on velvet. They sat side by side, shoulders touching, sharing the last of his salvaged chocolate ration. On my world, Zafira said softly, we believe stars are souls of ancestors, watching over us. My mother is up there somewhere, watching me break every rule, probably. She laughed, but it sounded sad. She would have like you, I think, yeah? Kale wrapped an arm around her shoulders, pulling her closer against the cool night air. What about your father? Zafira stiffened slightly. My father is complicated. He is a soldier? Something like that. She changed the subject quickly, pointing at a constellation. That one we call the Wanderer. Reminds me of you, alone, but finding his own path through darkness. Kale tilted her face toward his, seeing the way starlight reflected in her eyes. I'm not alone anymore. She kissed him again, deeper this time, her fingers tangling in his hair. When his hand slid beneath her jacket, finding the warm skin of her waist, she gasped against his mouth but didn't pull away. They explored each other slowly, carefully, learning the landscape of different bodies and finding the similarities more striking than the differences. Later, wrapped together under his salvaged blanket on the rooftop, Zafira traced patterns on his chest. Kale, if things were different, if there was no war, we'd still find each other, he finished, somehow. We'd have to, she smiled against his shoulder. and he felt her relax completely for the first time since he'd found her. What neither of them saw was the drone passing overhead, its camera recording everything, transmitting data to human military headquarters where a captain named Marcus Webb studied the images with growing interest. The hunt was about to begin. The truth revealed. The pounding on the basement door came 3 days later, just before dawn. Kale jolted awake, instantly alert. Zafira was already sitting up beside him, her eyes wide with fear. They'd grown careless, he realized with sick dread, spending too much time together, venturing out too often, believing they could exist in their own world separate from the war. Kale Ashford. A voice boomed from above. This is Captain Marcus Webb of the Human Defense Force. We know you're harboring an alien fugitive. Come out peacefully and you won't be harmed. Zafira's hand gripped his arm. Kyle, Stay quiet, he hissed, already moving. He grabbed his pack, shoving supplies inside with shaking hands. There was a back tunnel, an escape route he'd prepared years ago. If they moved fast. The door exploded inward. Soldiers poured down the stairs, weapons raised, flashlights cutting through the darkness. Kale moved to shield Zafira, but rough hands yanked him aside, throwing him against the wall. He struggled, but there were too many of them. Well. Captain Webb descended the stairs slowly, his sharp features twisted in satisfaction. He was older, maybe 40, with scars crossing his face and the cold eyes of someone who'd seen too much combat. The orphan scavenger playing house with the enemy. Touching, really. Let her go, Kyle demanded, tasting blood where his lip had split against the wall. She's just a medic, she's not. Webb laughed, a harsh sound that echoed off the concrete walls. A medic? Is that what she told you? He pulled out a tablet, swiping through images before shoving it in Kale's face. Recognize her now? The screen showed Zafira, but different. She wore elaborate military armor, stood beside a tall, imposing Valtorian male whose medals marked him as high command. The caption read, Commander Zethros Caney and daughter Princess Zafira Caney at the anniversary of unification. Princess. The word hit Kale like a physical blow. He looked at Zafira, searching her face for denial, for explanation, but her expression confirmed everything, guilt, shame, and resignation written across features he thought he'd learned to read. You lied, he whispered. Kale. Please, let me explain. Zafira reached for him, but the soldiers holding her jerked her back. Her father is Commander Caney, Webb continued, circling them like a predator. The Butcher of New Haven, as we call him. The man personally responsible for ordering the bombing that killed your family, Ashford. And you've been sleeping with his daughter. He smiled cruelly. Quite the love story. The room spun. Kale's knees wanted to give out, but fury kept him upright. Is it true? His voice cracked. Is your father the one who destroyed my city? Who killed my family? Zafira's eyes glistened with tears that spilled down her purple cheeks. Yes, but Kale, I didn't know about you, about what he'd done here until when? The words came out as a roar. Until after you let me save you? After I trusted you? He couldn't finish, couldn't say the word love because it hurt too much. I was going to tell you. Zafira fought against the soldiers holding her, desperation in her voice. That night on the roof I tried, but I was afraid of losing you, of seeing exactly what I see now on your face. You should have been afraid, Kale said coldly, even as something inside him shattered. You should have told me the truth. Webb clapped his hands once, sharp and mocking. Excellent drama, but let's move this along. Ashford, you have two choices. 1. We take the princess back to headquarters, put her on trial, and eventually execute her. You get a full pardon, a reward, and hero status. You'll finally matter to someone. The words were calculated to wound, and they did. Kale had spent 11 years being nobody, surviving on scraps and loneliness. Now he could have recognition, purpose, revenge. 2. Webb continued. You refuse to cooperate, we take her anyway, and you're charged as a traitor. Execution within the week. Your choice, but choose quickly. We've got more pressing matters than your little romance. Kale looked at Zafira. Even now, even knowing what she was, what her father had done, she was still beautiful. Still the girl who'd held his hand in the darkness, who'd kissed him under the stars, who'd made him feel less alone for the first time in his life. But she was also the daughter of the man who'd murdered everyone he'd ever loved. Kyle, please. Zafira's voice broke. I know you hate me now. I know you should. But everything between us was real. Every moment, every word, every touch, it was all real. I am not my father. I don't want this war any more than you do. Then why didn't you tell me? The question came out as barely a whisper. Because I am a coward, she said simply. Because I knew the truth would destroy what we had. And I wanted just a few more days of pretending we could be together. I'm sorry, Cale. I'm so sorry. Webb's patience wore thin. Time's up, Ashford. What's it going to be? Cale's mind raced. He thought about his parents, his sister, all the ghosts that haunted these ruins. They deserved justice. They deserved revenge. But he also thought about Zephyra's laugh when he'd told her a stupid joke. The way she'd traced the scars on his back and kissed each one. How she'd cried when he'd shown her his family's grave markers. How she'd helped him place fresh flowers there even though those graves represented her people's violence. She wasn't her father. She'd said that, and somewhere deep inside, beneath the rage and betrayal, Cale knew it was true. I need a minute, he said hoarsely. Webb shrugged. You've got 30 seconds. Cale stepped closer to Zephyra, ignoring the weapons that tracked his movement. Up close, he could see the fear and hope warring in her eyes. Did you mean it? He asked quietly. What you said that night? About how you felt? Every word. Her voice was steady despite her tears. I love you, Cale Ashford. Even if you hate me forever. Even if I die today, that won't change. You gave me something I never had. You saw me, not the princess, not the general's daughter, just me. And I will carry that with me wherever I go next. His heart hammered so hard it hurt. Love and hate twisted together until he couldn't separate them. She'd lied to him, betrayed his trust, but she'd also been the only light in his darkness, the only person who'd made him feel like he mattered. Time's up, Webb announced. Make your choice, Ashford. Hero or traitor? Cale looked at the captain, then back at Zephyra. His entire future balanced on this moment, and in that moment he finally understood what he had to do. The choice, I'll do it, Cale said, his voice flat. I'll testify. Help you with the trial. Whatever you need. The hope that had flickered in Zephyra's eyes died instantly. She sagged in the soldier's grip, her face crumpling. Cale. Good man, Webb said, satisfaction dripping from his words. You're making the right. On one condition, Kyle interrupted. I want 5 minutes alone with her first. No weapons, no interference. Just 5 minutes to say goodbye. Webb's eyes narrowed suspiciously. Why should I? Because you need me cooperative, Kyle said coldly. Because my testimony means more if I seem willing, not coerced. 5 minutes, that's all I'm asking. After a long pause, Webb nodded. Fine, but if you try anything stupid, we shoot you both. He gestured to his men. Clear out. Watch the exits. The soldiers filed up the stairs, leaving Cale and Zephyra alone in the basement that had been their sanctuary. The moment they were gone, Cale grabbed Zephyra's hand and pulled her toward the back wall. What are you? She started. Quiet, he hissed, pressing on a specific brick. A section of the wall swung inward, revealing the tunnel he'd mentioned earlier, his secret escape route. This leads to the old subway system. Comes up about 2 miles from here near the forest border. Zephyra stared at him, comprehension dawning slowly. You're helping me escape? I should let them kill you, Cale said, and his voice shook with emotion. You lied to me. Your father destroyed my entire world. I should hate you. But you don't, she whispered. No. God help me, I don't. He cupped her face in his hands, memorizing every detail one last time. I hate myself for it, but I love you, Zephyra. Even knowing what I know. Even knowing I can never forgive what your people did. I love you and I can't watch them kill you. Tears streamed down her face as she grabbed his shirt, pulling him into a fierce kiss. It was desperate and painful and tasted like salt and goodbye. When they broke apart, she pressed her forehead to his. Come with me, she begged. Please, Cale, we can run, both of us. Find somewhere the war hasn't reached yet. Start over. You know I can't. He pulled back, though it hurt worse than any wound he'd ever received. This is my home, these are my people. And you need to get back to yours. Maybe you can make a difference. Maybe you can help end this war before more kids end up like us. I will, she promised fiercely. I swear to you. I will spend the rest of my life trying to bring peace. For you, for us, for what we could have been. 3 minutes. Webb's voice echoed from upstairs. Cale pressed something into her hand. A small piece of twisted metal, part of a sculpture from his childhood home. So you don't forget me. Never. Zafira clutched it like a lifeline. Will you think of me sometimes? Every day. He kissed her one more time, soft and gentle, trying to pour everything he felt into that moment. Now go. Follow the tunnel, take the third left, then straight until you hit the ladder. Don't look back. She hesitated at the entrance to the tunnel, her silhouette framed by darkness. Kyle? In another life, we'd have everything. He finished. Now run! Zafira disappeared into the tunnel and Kale quickly sealed the entrance behind her. He stood there for a moment, hand pressed against the cold wall, feeling like his heart was being torn from his chest. Time's up. Heavy footsteps thundered down the stairs. Kale turned, schooling his features into blankness. When Webb and his soldiers burst in, he was sitting on the bed, head in his hands. Where is she? Webb demanded, weapon raised. Bathroom. Kyle gestured vaguely to the corner, said she needed a moment before, but Webb was already moving, kicking open the door to find the small bathroom empty. His face turned purple with rage. Search everything! The soldiers tore the basement apart. It took them 20 minutes to find the tunnel entrance, and by then, Kyle knew Zafira would be far away. The thought brought him a small, painful comfort. Webb grabbed Kale by the throat, slamming him against the wall. You helped her escape. You're a traitor. Maybe, Kyle gasped, meeting the captain's furious gaze. Or maybe I'm just someone who learned that love matters more than hate. That people aren't defined by who their parents were. That there has to be more to life than revenge. Poetic, Webb snarled. Say that at your execution. They dragged him upstairs, bound his wrists, threw him into a military transport. As the vehicle pulled away from his shelter, Kyle caught one last glimpse of the ruins bathed in dawn light. Somewhere out there, Zafira was running toward freedom, carrying his heart with her. He'd probably never see her again, would likely die for helping her escape. But as the city disappeared behind him, Kale found he didn't regret his choice. She'd given him something precious in those brief weeks. Hope. The belief that maybe, just maybe, the war wouldn't last forever. That someday people on both sides might choose love over hatred, peace over violence. He touched the spot on his chest where she used to rest her head and whispered to the wind, Zafira Caney, wind from stars. I'll wait for you. However long it takes, I'll wait. 3 years later, Kale worked in the community garden, coaxing vegetables from soil that had finally healed enough to support life again. The war had ended 18 months ago, not with victory or defeat, but with exhaustion and a treaty signed by leaders from both sides, who'd finally realized the alternative was mutual extinction. He'd served 2 years in prison for helping. Zafira escaped before being pardoned in the general amnesty. Now he helped rebuild, turning ruins into homes, hatred into hope, The voice made him freeze. That accent, musical and achingly familiar. Kale turned slowly, hardly daring to breathe. Zafira stood at the garden gate, older, wearing simple clothes instead of armor, but unmistakably her. Her purple skin glowed in the afternoon sun, and her eyes, those violet eyes that haunted his dreams, were bright with tears. I kept my promise, she said softly. I went home. I fought against my father's policies. I argued for peace until he finally listened. And when the treaty was signed, she stepped closer. I came back to see if you kept yours. Kyle's hands shook as he set down his tools. I said I'd wait. I meant it. Even after everything, even after I lied. You also saved me, he said, closing the distance between them. You taught me that love is stronger than hate, that we can be more than our worst moments, that understanding is possible even across impossible divides. She touched his face and it felt like coming home. I love you, Kale Ashford. I never stopped. I love you too, Zafira Caney. Wind from stars. He kissed her, gentle and reverent. A promise of new beginnings. Welcome home. Around them the garden bloomed, life returning to dead soil, impossible and beautiful and real. In the ruins of New Haven, where war had destroyed everything, two people who should have been enemies proved that sometimes, against all odds, love could rebuild what hatred had torn apart. And as the sun set over the healing city, painting the sky in shades of gold and purple, Kale and Zafira stood together, hands intertwined, looking toward a future they would build together. One garden, one gesture of peace, one act of love at a time.